Hey guys, welcome back to another cult movie review with me, Bo, here on the Film Scene Investigation channel. Thanks so much for checking out the video. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the 1994 drama, The Last Seduction. Before we get into it, guys, as always, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. So, The Last Seduction from 1994 was written by the screenwriter Steve Baranczyk and was directed by the filmmaker John Dahl. The film starred actress Linda Fiorentino in the lead role as the conniving femme fatale, Bridget Gregory. Now, Fiorentino is an actress who I'm very familiar with, having seen many of her films over the years. She pretty much quit acting in the early 2000s for reasons I'm not too sure of, but regardless, it was definitely a loss to the industry once she stopped acting, because she was a real talent. So when it comes to the film's plot, it followed the character Bridget Gregory and her husband Clay, who had just secured a $700,000 drug deal. Clay, who was played by the actor Bill Pullman, was a qualified physician who, on the side, sold pharmaceutical cocaine to anyone who wanted it. I mean, pretty much he was this smarmy creep who, clearly had a hostile relationship with his wife. Minutes into the film, we saw Clay return to the apartment and hit Bridget across the face in a, pretty unprovoked attack. It was a scummy move and completely uncalled for. But the attack was, I guess, the trigger that spurred Bridget on to end up leaving Clay and taking the money with her. Their relationship was volatile, to say the least, and it was clear that Bridget had had enough, and she was ready to leave her husband, and now it seemed like the perfect time, given all the money was there for the taking. So she took the money and drove as far away as she could, and eventually ended up in this small rural town called Beston. It was a quiet place and definitely worlds away from the busy hustle and bustle of New York City, and it turned out to be the perfect location for a woman who was on the run from her husband. Bridget kept a low profile in Beston while she initiated divorce proceedings with her attorney. She also went to great lengths to hide her identity, even going as far as to change her name so that basically her husband couldn't track her down. I mean, she knew that Clay wasn't going to just let her go. He wanted the money, and he was going to do everything in his power to get it back. It literally became a cat and mouse game between the two. But no matter how hard Clay tried, it always seemed that Bridget was 2 or 3 steps ahead. Clay would eventually hire a private investigator to help track down Bridget. Any contact that they had, Clay wanted it to be recorded and hopefully traced back to her location. The two eventually narrowed it down, and the private investigator called Harlan, who was played by actor Bill Nunn, decided to travel down to Beston in the hope of finding Bridget. And it didn't take long for Harlan to find Bridget and hold her at gunpoint in her car. He wasn't messing around. I mean, he was there for one reason and one reason only. He needed that money because he was also going to get a cut of it. Watching this scene, it really stuck out to me that it really didn't bother Bridget being held at gunpoint. I mean, it may have internally, but she showed no signs of being scared. I mean, she just kind of had a blank face and then started coming up with all these ways, these conniving ways to try and get Harlan out of the car so she could drive off. She tried very hard, but Harlan wasn't having any of it. He didn't buy into the mind games and, well, Bridget was trapped. So, with no option left, Bridget decided to purposely crash the car, which resulted in Harlan smashing through the windscreen. It was an ugly sight to see, but credit where credit's due. I mean, it was an ingenious move by Bridget, who was, one moment trapped, and then suddenly she was free. And once again, one step ahead of Clay, who was trying to regain the money. Separately to all of these cat and mouse games, we saw Bridget end up starting a relationship with a local guy called Mike, who was played by actor Peter Berg. He was this easily led guy who was single and unattached and basically infatuated with Bridget as soon as he saw her. I can't fault the character too much because indeed Linda Fiorentino was a very attractive woman back in the 90s. Because Mike was so easily led, he kind of was the perfect guy for someone like Bridget to manipulate, and that's exactly what she did. Bridget used him for her own gains, and Mike even knew this, yet he decided just to carry on like a little lapdog. I mean, the guy was in love, deeply infatuated, and wanted this full-blown relationship, but Bridget was very reluctant to get close. Bridget was not only a conniving woman, but she was also very smart, and she knew how to play with people's emotions. She also knew that deep down, it was only a matter of time before Clay eventually found her. So she decided to use Mike and try and convince him to kill Clay. It was this crazy idea, but in Bridget's eyes, it was the only way to fully eradicate Clay from her life. Bridget was asking Mike to commit murder, but Mike didn't want to have any part of it. But Bridget just kept pushing him and eventually gave him this ultimatum, whereas if Mike wanted this full-blown relationship, then he could have it. But first, he needed to kill Clay, get him out of their lives, and this would be some sort of big sign of commitment. Even though it was a really bad idea, Mike's love proved too strong, and eventually he was coaxed in to Bridget's murderous plan. But the interesting thing here was that to Mike, this was simply just a robbery of a wealthy man, and what he didn't know was that Clay was actually Bridget's husband. It was a small detail, but a pretty big one, and something that Mike definitely should have known about before going in to potentially commit murder. The film culminated with Mike traveling to New York and basically failing to kill Clay as originally planned. He had Clay tied up, he had him at gunpoint, he had him there for the taking, and all he needed to do was literally pull the trigger, but he couldn't go through with it. And that's because deep down, Mike wasn't a murderer. Clay then explained who he was, and suddenly Mike realized he'd been lied to. Not long after this, Bridget returned to the apartment with Mike and Clay waiting for her. As Mike waited for an explanation, Bridget played it cool and gave nothing away. But then, in this freak moment of madness, we saw Bridget spray Clay with some mace in his mouth, which resulted in him literally choking to death. It all came out of nowhere. I mean, Bridget was sitting on the sofa talking to Clay, Mike was in the background, and then suddenly Clay was dead. I mean, it's like, wow, okay. It was a shocking moment, but in a way, not that surprising. I mean, that's how devious this Bridget character was. And if Mike couldn't get the job done, then she certainly was going to take care of it. From there, things escalated even further, with Bridget attacking Mike and vice versa. Yeah, it was a complete, crazy scene, and what we actually learned was that this was just some big ploy by Bridget to incriminate Mike. And like the gullible guy that he was, he fell for Bridget's mind games. Now, when it comes to the performances in The Last Seduction, hands down, Linda Fiorentino stole the show with her commanding performance as Bridget Gregory. Fiorentino played the perfect femme fatale, plotting her evil deeds behind people's backs and showing zero remorse. And unlike the traditional noir films where the femme fatale's evil schemes usually led to their downfall, in The Last Seduction, Bridget actually subverted expectations by successfully carrying out her plan and getting away with it. In a way, Fiorentino kind of seduced the audience with her sultry charm and proved to be a brilliant choice by casting director David Rubin. Another thing I want to mention about the Bridget character was that I felt she must have been suffering from some psychological issues because, just from the way she acted and her general behavior, that wasn't normal. Happily going along, destroying people's lives in the process is, not something that people should do on a daily basis. Now, the movie never really explored Bridget's background, but it's safe to say that she must have experienced some sort of trauma in her life, because evidently, as she became an adult, she obviously had some serious trust issues. She couldn't trust anyone. There was like this invisible barrier that she put up that prevented people from getting too close. And if you kind of take all that into account, I guess in a sense it could be argued that Bridget was also a victim in the movie. I found it intriguing to see Bridget use her sexuality as a tool for her own gains. She was quite happy to play the damsel in distress to lure Mike on her side, only to then prey on his emotions and take advantage. The supporting cast were also really good in this movie, with the likes of Bill Pullman, who played Clay, this sleazy guy who clearly was no match for his wife. Bridget was ruthless, and Clay, on the other hand, was just too arrogant and self-absorbed, which made him an easy target. Bridget's other victim, Mike, who was played by actor Peter Berg, was another character who was completely out of his depth. I will say, though, that there was a certain innocence that Peter Berg brought to his character, which evidently highlighted Bridget's heartless personality. Now, when it comes to the look of the film, I was really impressed with the efforts by the cinematographer Jeffrey Jur. He decided to incorporate this very muted color palette, and it definitely evoked that classic noir style. There were also some very nice shots of New York City, which acted as the contrast to the very wide open spaces of Beston. Seeing New York in the 90s always gives me a sense of nostalgia. You know, just seeing it kind of pre 9/11, it just seemed very vibrant and an exciting time to be around. Before we get to the dislikes, I should also take a moment to mention the score by the composer Joseph Vettorali. The score consisted of a variety of jazz songs that, definitely heightened the film's mood and aesthetic. Now, while the score didn't bother me, I can imagine that for some who don't necessarily like jazz, the score could be very annoying. Adding such a unique score resulted in the movie having this quirky undertone, which was the complete contrast to the dark narrative that was being played out. And it showed just how powerful music can be. Because honestly, if you took out this soundtrack, took out all the jazz and replaced it with a more conventional kind of horror score, then The Last Seduction would, be seen as this crazy outright horror film. And so, dislikes for The Last Seduction from 1994. Now, when it comes to dislikes, I'll only bring them up if something really bothers me, or if I feel it's worth pointing out. But honestly, with The Last Seduction, there really wasn't any negative points I feel I need to raise. Now, I'm not saying that this movie is perfect. There's always room for improvement. But, just honestly taking a step back, there was nothing really that stood out to me that was negative. So, no real dislikes to speak of. And so, ratings for The Last Seduction from 1994. After much consideration, I am going to be rating this movie a solid 6.5 out of 10. The Last Seduction was this compelling cinematic experience that blended the classic neo-noir themes with a more modern sensibility. As mentioned, there were some great performances in this film, but undoubtedly Linda Fiorentino was the standout. I mean, this was very much her movie, and she owned it. I mean, she was given this opportunity to, be the lead character, to have a starring role. And she took the opportunity and she didn't disappoint. I totally recommend watching The Last Seduction if you haven't seen it yet. For those who have, please, of course, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And well, that is all from me today, guys. I do hope you have enjoyed this review of the 1994 movie The Last Seduction. I will be back next week, of course, with another movie review. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, take care.